If resting makes you feel guilty, your brain isn't lazy, it's afraid. And once you understand why, you won't look at rest the same way again. You finally sit down to relax, body tired, mind exhausted. Maybe you open your phone, maybe you lie on the bed, maybe you stare at the ceiling for a second. But instead of peace, your chest feels tight. A voice shows up. You should be doing something useful. You're wasting time. Other people are working harder than you. So even while resting, you're still exhausted. And that's the strange part. You're not moving, but your nervous system is running. They say it's a discipline problem. They say successful people don't need rest. They say guilt means you're ambitious. But that explanation exists only because it's simple, not because it's true. Because guilt, while resting, has nothing to do with productivity. Here's the part nobody talks about. This pattern comes from high social sensitivity. At some point, early in life, your brain learned a very specific rule. Your value comes from being useful, from doing, from contributing, from not slowing down. Maybe praise only came when you performed. Maybe love felt conditional. Maybe being productive made you feel safe. So your nervous system made a deal. As long as I'm useful, I belong. And when you stop producing, your nervous system doesn't read it as rest. It reads it as danger. Rest feels unsafe because your brain is scanning for rejection. Not logical rejection, emotional rejection. The kind that feels like, what if I fall behind? What if people judge me? What if I become replaceable? But this gets worse, because guilt doesn't make you work better. It makes you work scared. Scared rest turns into overthinking. Overthinking turns into pressure. Pressure turns into avoidance. You start doing things, but without presence. You stay busy all day, but nothing ever feels finished. Your mind jumps tasks. Your focus fragments. Your energy leaks. And underneath it all is the same feeling: quiet anxiety, mental fatigue, constant background stress. This is when people think they're broken. They look around and wonder, why can others relax so easily? Why do I feel bad doing nothing? Why does rest make me anxious instead of calm? If your brain could talk, it would say, relaxing feels illegal, because rest to your nervous system feels like losing approval. But here's the detail everyone ignores. Guilt-filled rest never recharges you. You may stop moving, but your brain never stands down. So every day starts already depleted. You wake up tired, not because you didn't sleep, but because your system never felt safe enough to shut off. That's why focus feels harder every year. That's why consistency feels impossible. That's why even smart, capable people feel stuck. Not because they're undisciplined, but because their nervous system is always on alert. Here's the shift that changes everything. Rest isn't a reward for finishing enough work. It's a signal of safety. Your brain doesn't need permission to rest. It needs reassurance. Reassurance that your worth doesn't disappear. When you stop producing, your brain isn't broken. It was trained to survive approval, not peace. And once you retrain that signal, something strange happens. Rest stops feeling guilty. Effort stops feeling heavy. Focus returns naturally. Not because you forced discipline, but because your system finally feels safe enough to recover. And that's when work becomes lighter, not harder. In the next video, I'll show you exactly how to retrain that response, so rest actually restores you instead of draining you.